me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Welcome back to the show. It's your host, as always, Andrew Zimmel. Took a little bit of a time off, about a week. Needed to recoup. Look, we've been putting out a lot of content, and I was getting a little bit of worn down. And the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, during quarantine is to get worn down. If you find a way to continue every single day doing something new, if you make every day a challenge, every day you are trying to create, you're going to have an easier time during this than if you're waking up every morning at 10 a.m. and going to bed at 5 a.m. and just, living life like you would. You're not going out, you're not seeing people, you're not FaceTiming people, you're not getting on your Zoom calls. That is when you're going to have the hardest time, I think. And we've been doing a pretty good job of keeping up content. We've been doing a pretty good job of talking, keeping things moving. For what we have right now, the area that I'm in is in a pretty much self-shelter at this point. They just shut down all the parks. All of the non-essential stores have been closed. And it's pretty much you're on your own. You can go get groceries. You can walk around your apartment complexes or just walk around the city. But for the most part, everything is closed down. So we have decided we took a week off. I got better with the schoolwork, made sure all the Zoom meetings worked. I talked to some people off the podcast, tried to get some things going, get some interviews, stuff like that. But for the most part, we took a week off, like I said, and here we are. We're going back at it again. Not a whole lot of information has happened since you last talked to us, since the last time that we saw each other. Everything is a little bit more murky, it feels like. The NFL still hasn't said what they're going to do with opening day. They haven't really figured out what they're going to do for training camps. The only thing we know right now is that they're going to move to a digital draft, which we're going to get to in a second. And then Major League Baseball had an announcement yesterday, which we're going to talk to towards the end of the podcast. So let's start it off with the Rams and Chargers, who have both agreed to sign up for Hard Knocks. Now, if you've never watched Hard Knocks before, if you're new to the programming of NFL films, Hard Knocks is one of the, if not the strangest experiences I think any NFL team can go through. Last year we had the Cleveland Browns trying to figure it out, trying to move forward. They had their terrible coach, Hugh Jackson, was in there. It really, I thought, did a pretty good job of making Hugh Jackson look like a lovable guy. Baker Mayfield was there, the number 1 overall pick. He was kind of a wild card. It made him look almost human. I think that got a lot of people on his side. It's a strange thing because you never get a winning team on Hard Knocks. It's always a team that's trying to rebuild. It's always a team that's trying to regroup. And they take you through NFL training camp. They take you through the process of cutting players, the process of where do we want to move this guy, this number 1 overall draft pick, what are we going to do with him? It shows you kind of the battles in the trenches for those guys trying to get those guaranteed contracts. So from a fan point of view, it's interesting for a diehard NFL fan. I think that the casual fan who watches the CBS game, the NBC game, then goes to bed, I think they might not enjoy it as much. But for the diehard NFL fans, I think that this is a really good product that they put out. But they have the Rams and Chargers. Why is that so interesting? Well, first off, I think it'd be one of the first times that I can remember, one of the times off the top of my head I can remember, where they would do 2 teams in the same city. And it would be really interesting to see the difference in the way the Rams run their organization, who I think that they have a better foothold in LA, and how the Chargers run their organization. How they had a built-in fan base in San Diego, moved to LA, and now they have no fan base. They're not being able to sell the licensing on the stadium. They're not being able to get season ticket holders. They get rid of their quarterback in Phillip Rivers. What are they going to do in that regard? Who are they going to draft in the draft? So for those reasons, I'm pretty excited for it. But the other thing that has me intrigued, I'm a little tickled by, is we might not have an NFL training camp. Like, there's a real possibility that this whole coronavirus thing goes into the late summer. That in August, we are just getting out of our homes. And September, we're barely being able to connect with people. We're getting in large crowds again. How are you going to do a Hard Knocks if the players aren't there? And it'll be eye-opening if the NFL forces this or pushes it through, and they say, "Hey, we're doing this. We're having the season on time. It doesn't really matter if fans are in the stadium. We've been seeing attendance decline for the last 10 years. That's not really the point. The point is to put a product on TV. This is, I think, going to be one of the first things in the second phase of the virus. We have the first phase right now. We're going through phase 1 right now. Everybody's getting sick. Hospitals are being overrun. Phase 2 is going to be well, we know the hospitals are overrun. We know somebody who's been getting sick. Are we going to throw ourselves to the wolves? Or we're going to just force our way through this virus? That's going to be, I think, phase 2 of this. And I think the NFL is going to be a big player, a big character in phase 2 for the sports world going through this virus. Now let's talk about the NFL draft, because guys like John Harbaugh are worried with Goodell's proposed idea. The proposed idea right now is that all 32 teams are going to pretty much be on a Zoom call, pretty much going to be on a big conference call, and they're going to put their picks in. That Goodell will be in, say, New York. He could be in Las Vegas. He could be in Miami. He will be the person who's reading off the picks. The NFL GM, the head coach, whoever it may be, he potentially could be there too, calling the picks in. And what Harbaugh's worried about is if somebody tries to intercept the picks, if somebody hacks the phone calls, if somebody is in the background of some of these chats, listening in. And what's interesting is, normally, if you had a team that you were going to, guess was going to cheat, it would be, I think, in everybody's mind outside of New England, it would be the Patriots. The Patriots would be the team that, they're probably going to be the ones that are going to cheat. We had Deflategate, we had Spygate, we had Bill Belichick wearing a hoodie in 100-degree weather. There's a lot of shady stuff with the Patriots organization. And now everything's going digital. It's very hard for me to buy that Bill Belichick, a guy who's old enough to be a grandfather to most of the listeners of this podcast, is going to find a way to intercept and steal information from other teams. Really hard for me to buy it. I think that it's a valid argument. I think that it's a good fear. It's a fear based in real life that you could have somebody steal your information. I think that the Ravens aren't the only team that's thinking that. I think Harbaugh is probably the first person to go on the record and say it, but I imagine that the other NFL teams have had that complaint already, saying, hey, well, if all of this stuff's online, we saw a couple years ago the Detroit Lions got a lot of their draft stuff stolen through pretty much a bad email CC. The Ravens are one of the teams. Ozzie Newsome is one of the better GMs. If they have a worry that this is going to get hacked, if this isn't going to work, then they have a pretty big voice in the conversation. If a team like Cleveland, a team like the Rams, team like the Bucks are the team that's kind of making a fuss about this, I think a lot of the NFL owners and GMs would say, shut up, sit down and shut up, because this is what's happening. But when it's a team like the Ravens, had the number one seed in the AFC this year, have done a pretty good job of drafting players, if they're the ones that are having a problem with it, that I think that says something. All right, let's move on to Major League Baseball. The season is in jeopardy. Our podcasts are in jeopardy. If you remember, earlier this year, we did the Major League Baseball preview. We broke down all the divisions. I gave you all the gambling odds. Selfishly, that took a lot of work. I would not want the season to be ended because of a virus, but it looks like it may be. Major League Baseball has a plan now that would allow the season to start early as May in Arizona. So here's what Rob Manfred and the Players Association are kind of figuring out. Major League Baseball has actively considered numerous contingency plans that would allow play to commence once the public health situation has improved to the point that it is safe to do so. MLB statement said, while we have discussed the idea of staging games at one location as a potential option, we have not settled on that option or developed a detailed plan. Now, I want to throw this back to, I want to say 2010. There was a movie that came out, and it starred one of our favorite yellow families, The Simpsons. If you don't know the premise of the Simpsons movie, hang with me, I'm going to explain it real quick. So the plan was, Springfield, the city that this cartoon family lives in, was very had a lot of pollution, was ruining the environment for everybody else, so they put a big glass dome over the city. I think that is what sports is trying to do. I think sports right now are looking for the perfect city. We saw Dana White with UFC. He said he's bought an island, that he's going to have all the fights on that island. I think that UFC, the same way that the WWE is set up, that the fan attendance matters just as much as the fight. It would be really hard for me to watch two grown men try to kill each other without the essence of the crowd in the background. Okay, that's going to be a real hard sell for me. But Major League Baseball has had this idea, the health and the safety of our employees, players, and fans, and the public at large are paramount, and we're not ready at this time to endorse any particular format for staging games in the light of the rapidly changing public health situation caused by the coronavirus. Now, we didn't have Alexander Haynes on last week. That's a disservice to you guys, because you guys deserve to have him on as often and as much as possible, because the guy knows what he's talking about. But we have said this before. We said this in the past. We said that what's going to end up happening is that because this virus is so rapidly changing, it's going to be real hard to decide on one plan to go forward with. And I think, again, baseball is the first sport that is going to figure this out. Basketball is going to have their playoffs at some point. I think what they have decided to have happen, they haven't announced it yet, but I have a sneaking suspicion what they're going to do. They're going to take the 8 seeds that were already in playoff contention. Memphis is going to be the 8 seed in the West. They're going to stage the playoffs at some point, probably in Vegas, I would say. And going forward, that's just they're going to do a 3-game playoff or whatever in the first round. But with baseball, with a season that has 100-plus games, you really can't do that. The season didn't even start yet. Spring training was barely getting into the halfway point of spring training when this whole thing hit. So what baseball is trying to do right now is figure out what's the quickest way to start our season. May feels very early to me. It's April 7th at the time of recording this podcast, and we are in peak week according to all the health officials. For you to say that in early May you're going to have the season start, that feels not only reckless, it feels like baseball is trying to get out in front of something. And you remember last week we had the president talk to all the commissioners of the sports, and he said we're trying to get these games started by September. Well, the same president said that we were going to try to get the whole country going by Easter. So I have a very tough time buying any time frame, any window that this administration is giving us. I think that it's a day-by-day thing. After, it just feels weird to me, and it might feel weird to you guys too. It feels weird to me that after this phone call with all the commissioners of sports, baseball says, hey, early May is where we're shooting for. I hate to be a pessimist. 2020 was the year of trying to be optimistic, trying to be more kind to people. But I'm going to be straight with you guys. It's very hard for me to buy that baseball is going to be back in early May. It feels like that is a carrot that isn't there. I can't think that we're going to be able to have baseball in early May. And not only baseball, because they're not opening day is not May 1st. It's going to be getting players back to practicing. And then I think June is what they said. Yeah, early June would be opening day. If they can't get the season started by July 1st, I know that everybody's been saying that, and I don't think I need to tell you guys that June or July 1st would be the best possible option for opening day. But if they can't get the season started by July 1st, Joe Buck's going to have a tough... Well, actually, he's going to have the easiest October of his life. Because I don't think that we're going to have a playoffs, but I don't think we're going to have anything for baseball. And it sucks. Because, I talked about selfishly, we did all those baseball podcasts, but this was going to be a great year for baseball. This was the first year that you could honestly say that the two biggest markets in the sport, LA and New York, had an inside shot at winning the whole thing. It's the first year that you really could honestly say that. The Yankees had good pitching. The Dodgers got Mookie Betts. If you're a Red Sox fan, you're loving this. Because Chris Sale got Tommy John surgery, and now he might not come back. If there's no season, he can rehab on his own, and he'll be fine. Red Sox don't have a terrible record. And this rebuild saves you from watching a 80-something loss team. So that's the plan right now for Major League Baseball. Like I said, I don't buy it. I don't think that those numbers are correct. I would like to see something change with this virus before I really hitch my wagon to that idea. Twitter loved it. Of course, everybody on Twitter was enthralled by the idea of having this work. I don't see it work. So that's just me. Tomorrow, we're going to bring you more podcasts. It's real tough to do a Television Tuesday today. Sorry, it was just too much stuff. Figured I would hit the sports hard today, and then, of course, any other information, any other news we get, we'll continue to put podcasts out. So, it's going to do it for us on this end. I hope that you guys are healthy and happy. Please, please, please stay inside if you can. I saw a lot of people with masks the other day when I was picking up some groceries. I was the only person without a mask. That was very risky on my part. I'll own up to it. Shouldn't have been going out without a mask. That's the new normal now, is everybody wears masks. So if you don't have one, there's a lot of DIY stuff that you can do. Do-it-yourself stuff. You can make a mask for yourself. I would strongly suggest doing that. And tomorrow, we're going to bring you more content. So stay healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow.